Once it gets inside, that's when the killing starts.
Now, the only way to tell man
He's one of them.
from machine is by the sound of their scream.
Things ain't what they used to be.
Screamers has a long and storied production entangled with groundbreaking Hollywood visionaries. So we're going to ask, how did a short story from 1953 inspire some of the biggest sci-fi franchises in Hollywood? Why did Screamers, even though its premise is even more relevant today, basically fade into obscurity? And most importantly, what happens after AI takes over the world? Spoilers ahead for 1995's Screamers. Welcome back, my friends. I am Darby Ellis Lewis Wilson, and this is a channel where we like to talk about bad movies and big ideas. And if you're plagued by the crippling fear of what happens after the folly of man puts artificial intelligence into bloodthirsty buzzsaws, then stick around, because today we're looking at the strange history of Screamers, a mid-1990s sci-fi thriller adapted from the works of legendary science fiction writer Philip K. Dick.
It's a science fiction movie called Screamers with some far-out things going on. Screamers are little mechanical weapons that quickly learn to make themselves bigger and deadlier. Eventually, the little guys make themselves look like humans, and I think it's fascinating.
The 80s and 90s were an amazing time for sci-fi cinema. Audiences had witnessed the groundbreaking success of the Terminator movies and Blade Runner, both of which explored the intersection of technology and humanity.
Our goal here at Tyrell, more human than human is our motto.
Yeah, more human than human, more human.
And with the success of Total Recall, yet another adaptation from Philip K. Dick, in addition to Blade Runner, it seemed obvious the audiences and studios wanted more Dick. Enter Screamers, released in 1995, a film blending the paranoia of Dick's original story with the grim aesthetic of 90s dystopian sci-fi. The movie was directed by Christian Duguay, whose background in action and thrillers brought a visceral edge to this adaptation. Starring Peter Weller, yes, RoboCop himself.
Your move, creep.
It promised tense action, philosophical musings, and killer robots. Screamers had all the makings of a smash hit. So why was it a flop at the box office? Screamers started its journey in 1953 as a short story published in space science fiction magazine called Second Variety. The story was a powerful anti-war statement wrapped in a chilling sci-fi narrative about self-replicating killing machines called claws. These deadly devices eventually evolve into humanoid robots, raising questions about identity, deception, and destruction. In 1979, a young and aspiring movie developer named Daniel Gilbertson was on the hunt for the next Star Wars. Gilbertson partnered up with a science fiction consultant from the LA Science Fantasy Society named Doug Crepu, and together they pumped out a 19-page treatment for Dick's short story titled Claw, Cybernetic Learning Anti-Personnel Weapon. Reportedly, after showing him the treatment, Philip K. Dick proclaimed that it was better than the original story. Needless to say, studios were excited for the next big science fiction franchise and sent Gilbertson on a quest to find a writer to flesh out the entire script. After a few different tryouts, Gilbertson landed the perfect writer-director combo, Dan Bannon, hot off the success of his genre-defining screenplay for Ridley Scott's Alien. O'Bannon was the perfect pick not only because of his work on Alien and schlock favorite Dark Star. O'Bannon was also a huge Philip K. Dick fan and already had a finished screenplay for another one of Dick's short stories, We Can Remember It For You Wholesale, which would eventually become Total Recall. Dan O'Bannon worked on the script for a while, but fought with the studio over creative differences like changing the name of the antagonist robots from Claws to Screamers. Unfortunately, he fell ill right before the studio's deadline. Gilbertson, not wanting the project to die, reunited with Doug Crepu and finished the majority of the script. Finally, Claw the movie was set to film in Mexico City and then release on Memorial Day, 1982. However, the studio still wanted O'Bannon's name attached to the script, and legal battles ensued. After being fired, Gilbertson and Crepu would eventually be compensated for their work, but the studio owned the script and the project had completely stalled. Now it's time for the twist. If a nuclear post-apocalyptic future where mankind is fighting against self-replicating killer robots disguising themselves as humans sounds familiar, that's because before landing on Dan O'Bannon, Gilbertson had already workshopped his treatment with a number of up-and-coming writers. In 1984, James Cameron's massive box office hit, The Terminator, hit theaters. Needless to say, Gilbertson's vision was dead. The script for Claw passed from hand to hand until it was eventually bought by producer Charles Fries. After enough time had passed and studios saw from Blade Runner and Total Recall that adaptations of Philip K. Dick could be profitable, screenwriter Miguel Tejada Flores was hired to rework the script, scrub away as many similarities to the Terminator as possible, and of course, keep Dan O'Bannon's name on the cover. Interestingly, O'Bannon wouldn't even learn about the project until the movie was released. By the time the adaptation reached theaters, Screamers would differ significantly in scope, tone, and execution from the original story. In the second variety, humanity is split between Earth and a moon base, with the moon base serving as the last refuge for the survivors. Screamers takes place in the year 2078 on Sirius 6b, a planet ravaged by years of war between a mining company, the NEB, New Economic Bloc, and the Alliance, a group of former employees, scientists, and miners that oppose the NEB's insistence on mining despite toxic gases killing workers and destroying the ecosystem. In a desperate attempt to win the war against the NEB's overwhelming, nope, that was right, just wrong. Big burps. Big burps. In a desperate attempt to win the war against the NEB's overwhelming nuclear arsenal, the Alliance creates mobile autonomous swords, or what they call screamers, due to the high-pitched whirring noise they make while attacking. The Screamers put the war into a stalemate, leaving the two factions to supposedly negotiate back on Earth while soldiers wait in the trenches of Sirius 6b for word of any resolution. While the short story focuses tightly on a Cold War allegory between the United Nations and the Soviet Union, Screamers wavers back and forth from commentary on environmentalism and workers' rights to nuclear war and what it means to be human. And for some reason, Screamers changed the name of the central protagonist from Hendrix to Hendrickson, allegedly to pad the screenwriting cred for Tejada Flores. But names don't really matter in this movie anyway.
At gunnery school, everybody called me Ace.
Jefferson, you coming or you're breathing hard?
Jefferson.
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 Jefferson. Jefferson.
Jefferson. Jefferson. What am I speaking? Swahili?
However, both versions present the paranoia of an escalating arms race that not only leads to our ultimate destruction, but also hints at what could replace us. He had been right about the bomb. It had been designed by one of the underground factories, apart from all human contact. A last ironic thought drifted through Hendrick's mind. He felt a little better thinking about it. The bomb, made by the second variety to destroy the other variety, made for that end alone. They were already beginning to design weapons to use against each other. Or as RoboCop puts it,
Well, you're coming up in the world. You've learned how to kill each other now.
so why did a movie adapted from one of sci-fi's greatest authors become a flop? What went wrong? Well, aside from the Terminator movies beating Screamers to the punch and sucking all of the air out of the room for sentient robot think pieces, the movie was a mess. It could easily boast beautiful matte-painted backdrops, gritty and immersive production design, and some cutting-edge practical effects. But it was riddled with odd choices, like bad generic rock and roll that winds up undercutting epic moments.
Perfect ending to a picture perfect day. Ain't no problem then, 'cause everything's okay.
A sloppy third act where the budget was obviously running out, and an underdeveloped and forced love story.
I learned something else too. I learned too.
Not to mention that it seems like Peter Weller really didn't want to be there and only showed up for the paycheck.
As for Weller, don't ask him about all those effects and technical paraphernalia.
I don't read science fiction. Not interested in science fiction. Not interested in special effects. I'm only hired to say the words.
But despite all of that, nearly 30 years later, Screamers feels more relevant than ever. In the real world, just 4 short years after the first programmable digital computer was introduced, the father of theoretical computer science, Alan Turing, developed a test in 1949 to see if computer intelligence could flawlessly imitate the intricacies and nuance of human conversation. No computer has ever been able to successfully pass the Turing test until ChatGPT absolutely destroyed it in 2023. As AI continues to dominate headlines, the film's core questions linger. Will AI take our jobs? Will it surpass us? Will it destroy us? And if it does, then what? Here's my take. The Screamers aren't just weapons. Like AI, they're a reflection of humanity. As artificial intelligence becomes more human, and gains the ability to think independently, it will potentially inherit our same flaws. With human autonomy and free will comes conflicting desires. Conflict breeds war, and war creates tools of annihilation. Just as the Alliance crafted the Screamers to gain the upper hand against the NEBs, but would wind up unleashing something far worse, AI could follow a similar trajectory. Second Variety arguably inspired films like The Terminator and The Matrix, or the slew of other rogue AI movies to come out within the past few years. But Screamers takes the idea further, suggesting that in the end, it's not our machines that doom us, but ourselves. But what do I know? Do Screamers deserve more praise, or has it been rightly overlooked? But more importantly, can it tell us something about the future of AI and humanity? Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and if you're still pondering the future of artificial intelligence, humanity, and creativity, then check out these videos over here. Until next time, schlock on!
I don't read science fiction. Not interested in science fiction. Not interested in special effects. I'm only hired to say the words.